A Roman open-air market is in full swing. Columns bifurcate shops and cloth is tied overhead to shade shoppers and sellers from the high noon sun. Merchants from faraway places, like Northern Europe and North Africa, are trading with locals and other foreign merchants. They sell wine, haggle over timber, or bargain over bags of corn. Then, at the mouth of the market enters merchants who have traveled hundreds of miles. Maybe they came from Alexandria, Damascus, or Constantinople, passing on goods from other merchants who also traveled hundreds of miles. They have precious goods that have come from the far, far, far east. Some carry silks, others have sacks of seeds of foreign crops, and one bag glows green from the inside. Jade, a precious stone that has traveled almost 5,000 miles to decorate a goblet or be placed onto a neckline. With a discerning eye, what was once a rock now became a symbol. Each culture along the Silk Road imprinted their own meaning onto it. In ancient China, jade is more important than gold. People wear it around their necks or keep a stone in their pocket to rub for harmony, purity, immortality, balance, and good luck. Then thousands of miles away, the Romans attributed it to the earth and their fertility goddess. It's interesting that we traded stones. Stones have no impact on our survival. Gems don't keep you warm or feed you. But at some point in our evolution, something clicked. Being alive is more than survival. Life can have beautiful moments. We can cherish items and imbue meaning. There's something to hold on to after all of the pain and suffering and disappointment that life also throws at us. We discovered it's important to enjoy the pleasures of life. And in 1889, there's one woman who finds beauty in unexpected places everywhere she goes. I'm Adrien Behn, and this is Strangers Abroad, a race around the world, based on the true story of Elizabeth Bisland. Elizabeth Bisland doesn't need a jade stone or a fortune teller to know that she has good luck. While Nellie tightens her grip on this race, Elizabeth continues to relax as she's carried through the tropics and indulges in her sample platter of delights. We sail through the blue days on a level keel. The sea does not even breathe, but it quivers in the terrible splendors of the noon with undreamable peacock radiances. Where Nellie wants time to speed up, Liz wants nothing more than for time to take its time. On her way from Hong Kong to Singapore, Liz has an easy ride. And even with her last-minute ship swap, she says she's never been so happy as when she's on the Thames. I'm worn out with delight. My head swims with glorious confusion of tropic splendors, and there's no room or capacity in it for more impressions. She admires the milky jade-tinted sea and loves the slinky softness of the tropics. Liz is from the south, so this heat is familiar to her. The thick humidity veils Liz in a lackadaisical aura. I sleep the laborious, voluminous sleep of the tropics. Life is good in this magnificent equatorial world. Again, I'm a great sponge, absorbing beauty and delights with every pore. Every day brings new marvels and new joys. I go to bed exhaustedly happy and wake up expectantly smiling. Now, Liz is the only young woman on this ship. There's another little old granny from Boston, but the majority of the passengers are British soldiers. And on this route, Liz feels very comfortable on the ship with such few females. Maybe she's gotten used to being the rare woman. So instead of looking at the men in fear and apprehension, the men from captain to cook are fine creatures. Their physical vigor is superb. Such muscles. They're flat-backed and lean-loined. They carry huge shoulders with a lordly swagger. Liz's lust does not stay on the mainland. She categorizes each of their varied British accents and bites her lip, thinking about which one she prefers to hear most. There is the man with the burly beard and a broad Scotch drawl, the handsome officer who has a Yorkshire on the tip of his tongue, the salon tea planter talks like a New Yorker, or the tall blonde from Oxford, leaving one speechless in awe of all of these eccentricities. Liz needs to fan herself off. So to distract herself, she goes up on deck and watches the sunset every night. The lavender water transforms into deep shades of purple and red as the sun pulls the light away for the night. There are no pageants of sunsets. The burning ball, undimmed by any cloud, falls swiftly and is quenched in the ocean. Then Liz tilts her head back to look up at the brilliant stars above her, recognizing the same constellations she can point back to at home. Then the constellations hang in the awful vault of darkness like enormous gleaming lamps trembling in suspension. The similar stars, the warm nights remind her of the bayou, making her feel less like she is on the opposite side of the planet.
Day 40, December 23rd.
Every hour brings us nearer the equator, and on the morning of the 23rd of December, we sight Singapore, 70 miles only from the center of heat. At a distance, Liz can already tell that the natural world is really in charge here. Against the skyline everywhere are the feathery heads of palms, and the tremendous riot of verdure upon all the hills is of a vivid, dazzling green. The vegetation is enormous, rampant, violent. It contests every inch of space with man, and aided by incessant heat and moisture. 700 years has this city of the lions stood, but the never-ending battle with the tropic nature's lust for disintegration has left it with no monuments of its great age. The ship docks in Singapore for the night. After they fuel, Liz will head to Penang and then Colombo, retracing Nellie's path. The lily-white, light-haired, fair-weathered British soldiers complain about the heat. But Liz's southern sensibilities kicked in, and she feels at home in the thick humidity. Then her heart thumbs a pang of pain. She's so far from home. She shakes her head and is escorted down the gangplank to the mainland. When her feet hit the island, she walks amongst the white houses that pop up against the natural red roads. She inhales the scent of yellow mangoes and pineapples sold on the streets. On her way to her hotel, she passes people of all backgrounds: Malay, Chinese, Indians, and the British. She arrives in her hotel and loves it. Everything is a cool white, from the cotton linen of people's clothes to the lime that they wash their homes in. Liz gets to her hotel room, puts down her night bag filled with her change of clothes for the morning, and heads off to dinner. She has a delightful meal. Liz joyfully scoops bright yellow curry onto her plate with a giant soft pink shell and plucks sweet rolls off a banana leaf platter. As she hums to herself in the delights of the tropics, she listens to one of the men seated at her table. Her dinner companions are two young subalterns and an English officer who's been stationed in the East for long enough that all but the succulent English flesh has been burned off of him long ago and left him lean, tawny, and dry. This English officer attempts to give these two enthusiastic young soldiers sage advice. With a stiff upper lip, he has no enthusiasm. He has no interests except duty and the service. He does not think any locals in the East are in the least pretty or pleasant. His advice to the youngsters, while valuable, is saturninely patronizing and full of disillusionment, and one can see it falls somewhat coldly upon their youthful ardor. Liz does not let this English officer cool her enthusiasms. She takes another slurp of the stupendous curry and thinks about how sad it is to only see the world through war. She doesn't want to be around this energy. And fortunately, the meal is heavy enough to send her to bed early. Liz cozies up in her room. A huge, dim apartment with a stone floor, opening directly upon the lawn and into the dining room. The bed is an iron frame. The single hard mattress is spread with a sheet, and there are no covers at all. She slips into her nightgown. She opens up the windows, allowing the lush air to seep into her bedroom. She lies down on the bed and feels the cool mattress against her skin. She doesn't need much more to lull her to sleep. Liz snuffs out her candle, and a warm breeze blows through the window. As she lays in bed, she waits to feel the drop of melatonin seep into her body, and she falls into a light sleep until she hears a rustling. What was that? Did I hear something? Was I dreaming? A tingle runs down her spine. And suddenly, she knows she isn't alone. The noise is not in her head. It's coming from inside the room. Adrenaline drop kicks her melatonin out of her system. Sweat dots her forehead, and her dress sticks to her body. She doesn't even have a sheet to cover her head and give her the illusion of protection. The room is hot, utterly black and still, save for the sound of those feet and the loud banging of my heart against my ribs. There's only one creature that could be making such a noise. A tiger must have gotten into her room. Tigers are known to hunt people after dark. Maybe she didn't hear other people scream because the tiger has already gotten to them. Liz can't take this lying down. If she's going to be eaten, at least she wants to see who's going to do it. In the dark, she quietly reaches over for her matches, takes one out, and strikes it. The sound of the match does not upset her beastly roommate. Once the flame begins to swallow more of the candle wick, it illuminates a small area of the room. Liz's eyes adjust, and she makes eye contact with the monster making the noise. To her relief, it's not a tiger. But to her disappointment, it is a fat, heinous, repugnant rat. Sniffing through her stockings. Honestly, this critter is big enough to take on a tiger. The rat looks right into Liz's eyes, paw on her shoe, and Liz stares back. Ugh. I have no intention of attacking him, and my notice appears to bore him. Liz is so tired that the rodent is the least of her problems. As it sniffs on the balls of her shoe, the beast moves onto her gloves and dress, running its long nose along the hemline. Its fat tail wags back and forth like a flag caught in the wind. It seems to be enjoying this open-air market. It's disgusting. I wish I was back home in my bed. At least the rats in New York are smaller. Whatever, Mr. Rat. As long as you don't come near me, do whatever you want. Everything can be cleaned in the morning. Liz blows out her candle and goes to sleep.
Day 41, December 24th.
The next morning, Liz feels off. Her nerves are being pulled on and she feels sensitive to everything. I have a guess what time of the month it is, but she isn't really in the mood for exploring, which is fine, because her afternoon is uneventful. She's accompanied by the chief of police, who gives her a tour of the city. In a little pony and carriage, they ride around to the governor's palace surrounded by palm trees and bamboo. They explore botanical gardens, museums, and shops before returning to the ship. Singapore is small enough to see everything rather quickly. As they ride in the buggy on their way back to the harbor, Liz feels off. By now, she appreciates that her adventure has been like a living poem. but a soft sadness creeps over her. She feels conflicted. She loves all of this travel, but she's halfway around the world and is longing to be home. What's wrong with her? Maybe it's because it's Christmas Eve, and she can't help but think what her friends and family are doing without her. She sifts through her feelings as she gets back onto the Thames and they exit Singapore's harbor.
Day 42, December 25th.
Nellie isn't the only one having a hard time enjoying the holiday. Although Liz's day at sea has been far less dramatic, the feeling of homesickness remains as they land in Penang's harbor, trying to deck out the halls. The ship tried to pretend that they were all back in their chilly homelands, not the sweltering oceans of Sumatra. The ship is decorated with much variegated bunting, and the servants assume an air of languid festivity. But most of us suffer from planted remnances of home and nostalgia. There is a splendid plum cake for dinner, and the Santa Claus atop, huddled in sugar furs despite the burning heat. We pulled Christmas crackers, and from their contents I am loaded with paste jewels. Liz longs for her sisters and her friends. Although she has met incredible people and been to incredible places, is it worth missing her time with her family? Liz did not have an execution site to distract herself from her holiday melancholy, but she does get to explore Penang. After their celebrations, Liz and some companions go out to explore the island. Penang. Its peaks shoot sharply up in the blue air, 2,000 feet, warped in a tangle of prodigious verdure. To their very tops, enormous palm forests fringe along the shore. They decide to go to a waterfall excursion and are pulled through the dense jungle by a little pony and carriage. On their way, we overtake a Chinese funeral, winding towards the cemetery, all the mourners clad in white. The coffin of unpainted wood is so heavy and so large that 20 pallbearers are required to carry it. It is the most cheerful cortege. No one seems in the least downcast or dispersed by their bereavement. As they exit the tiny city, the path into the forest zigzags through the dense labyrinth of trees. Liz passes under coconut trees 100 feet high. It is frightfully hot here amongst the trees. The atmosphere is a steam bath, and the moisture pours down our faces as we spring from stone to stone. There's a driver, and they hire a local boy to guide them through the forest. Liz admires the local boy, who knows the forests so well and has the speed and agility of a goat. Up there in the tops of the palms flows a dazzling flood of light, and as the faint warm wind waves the huge dropping fans, we catch flashes of flaming blue. But we are in the shadow and cannot feel the wind's breath. Then finally they come up to the garden. Liz notices the differences between all of the foliage, and her young guide shows her a trick. The garden lies between two very lofty cone-shaped peaks and is well kept and full of tropical blossoms. The boy stops to show me in the grass tiny fronds of this sensitive plant that shudder away from his rude little finger with a voluntary movement startling to see in a plant. They walk through the garden and Liz can hear the waterfall, but can't see it yet. We hear the rushing screech of waters calling loudly in the hills, save the mountain garments of opulent verdure. Then the trees part and the view opens. Liz watches the green pool quiver as glittering silver splashes down into it. She takes it all in. It is so stunning. Then Liz notices something in the corner. A tiny shrine built here at the site of this first pool is tended by a thin, melancholy young priest who lives alone at this great height. His only companion are the ceaseless brute of the waters and the little black elephant-headed god in the shrine. He bears a spot of dried clay upon his forehead, a token of humility at this morning devotion. He dips his hands into the water, then in the dust touches upon his brow and wears this sign of submission all day. I lay a piece of money upon the altar, and in return am given a handful of pale perfumed pink bells that grow upon the mountainside and are the only sacrifice offered to the little black god. The priest smiles at Liz, and he turns around. He plucks a few of these tiny pink flowers around them, turns back to Liz, and beckons her forward. A curious smile graces her lips as she steps closer to him. The priest mimes her to remove her hat and indicates that he would like to tie the flowers into her hair. They are pleased when I comply. Liz takes off her hat and turns her back towards him. Standing on soft moss, she holds her hat and closes her eyes. She feels the gentle touch of his fingers run through her hair and separate her locks. Her lips curl into a pursed smile as one by one, tiny pink blossoms poke out of her chestnut brown hair. Liz inhales the perfume of the tropical forest and the kindness of this generous priest. When they're done, Liz turns around to see the priest smiling a big, toothy smile. Liz blushes and smiles back at him. She clasps her hands together and holds them over her heart. She bows, and then he bows. She touches the little bells in her hair, so gingerly placed by this complete stranger. To think that only 43 days ago, Liz had been in the gray, flat plains of Nebraska. And now, she's standing in a world that is anything but plain. And she knows that the cost of not being at home for the holidays, just this one time, is worth it. A Race Around the World was written, produced, researched, narrated, scripted, edited again, re-narrated, soundscaped, scored, mixed, mastered, and voiced by me, Adrien Behn. Sam Dingman was our editorial consultant and emotional support. Father Time was played by Jake Dingman. Resources include 80 Days by Matthew Goodman, In 7 Stages, A Flying Trip Around the World by Elizabeth Bisland. And for more resources, go to our website, strangersabroadpodcast.com. Please go to Apple Podcasts to rate, review, and subscribe to A Race Around the World. If you leave a review, I will leave it at the end of the credits, like... Emmy Lou Barnes gives it 5 stars and says, "So inspiring. I can't believe both women just jumped into this and had such adventures. Why don't we know about them? Stellar, absolutely stellar. Ugh. Thank you so much. My heart is exploding." And if you're interested in all of the bonus content, anecdotes, and historical facts that didn't make it into the show, head over to our TikTok at Strangers Abroad Podcast. If you would like to email us, please send over a lovely message at strangersabroadpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and come back next week for the next leg in the adventures of Nellie Bly and Elizabeth Bisland. Safe travels to everyone listening.